Demolition Man wasn't just action. It was prophecy wrapped in neon satire. But behind the cryo-cop and the chaos, it was survival in a future too strange to fake. A lawsuit that blindsided Hollywood, Bullock's throwaway line that became her future, and jokes that aged into warnings. These are 20 weird facts about Demolition Man, and hidden inside the shells and the skyscrapers. First, Van Damme versus Seagal, then Stallone versus Snipes. Number 1. Before Stallone ever froze as John Spartan, Warner Brothers imagined a very different fight. The studio wanted an all-martial arts showdown, pairing Jean-Claude Van Damme against Steven Seagal. But both action stars refused. Neither would agree to play the villain. Stallone stepped in, eager to anchor a futuristic cop story, and immediately pushed for Jackie Chan as Simon Phoenix. Chan was intrigued, but his Chinese fanbase loathed seeing him cast as evil, so he declined. That opened the door for Wesley Snipes, who embraced Phoenix's anarchic madness. He bleached his hair blonde, a look he hated so much he shaved it off the second filming wrapped, and turned the villain into a manic, gleeful engine of chaos. What began as a martial arts fantasy ended up as a gladiatorial clash of personalities, Stallone's stoic intensity colliding with Snipes' unhinged energy. Number 2. Before Sandra Bullock became the wide-eyed, futuristic cop Lenina Huxley, the role actually belonged to Lori Petty, fresh off Point Break and Tank Girl. Petty lasted just 2 days on set before creative clashes ended her run. The production scrambled, desperate for someone who could balance Stallone's granite seriousness and Snipes' wild energy with warmth and comic timing. Enter Sandra Bullock. She was still a rising actress, better known for small roles, but her charm instantly reshaped the character. Suddenly, Huxley wasn't just a sidekick, she became the film's heart, a bridge between chaos and idealism. Just months later, Bullock would headline Speed, launching her into superstardom. Looking back, it feels like Demolition Man didn't just save a troubled role, it accidentally introduced one of the biggest stars of the Number 3. 1993 wasn't just busy for Sylvester Stallone, it was punishing. Demolition Man and Cliffhanger overlapped so much that Stallone was doing interviews about scaling icy peaks while still wearing John Spartan's futuristic uniform. He'd wrap an action sequence in San Angeles, then dash off to promote himself dangling over the Alps. The grind was brutal. Sleepless flights, back-to-back call sheets, and no time to breathe. But the gamble worked. Within a single year, Stallone went from reinventing the action hero in a neon satire to clinging off cliffs in one of the decade's most intense thrillers. For a surreal moment in Hollywood history, he wasn't just the face of one blockbuster. He was the blockbuster, carrying two very different worlds on his shoulders at the same time. Number 4. On set, Wesley Snipes was a blur. Years of martial arts training gave him explosive speed, but when he unleashed it for Demolition Man, the cameras couldn't keep up. His kicks and punches were so quick they registered as a smear on film, leaving the fight coordinators frustrated and the editors with nothing to cut to. The solution was almost ironic. Snipes had to slow himself down, pulling strikes in half speed just so the audience could actually see them. Even then, his fluid motion gave Simon Phoenix a feral, unpredictable edge, as if he was always one step faster than the future cops chasing him. What might have been a technical headache ended up becoming part of his character, a villain who didn't just outsmart the system, but seemed to outrun the very lens trying to capture him. Number 5. Demolition Man almost had a hidden heartbeat, John Spartan's daughter. Early drafts and even filmed scenes revealed that she had survived the cryo years, grown up, and joined the underground resistance. At one point, Spartan was even meant to reunite with her during the wasteland sequences. She appears briefly as an extra in one cut, a ghost of the storyline that was. But when the studio screened it, the subplot dragged, bogging down the action with too much sentiment. So the editors sliced it away completely. Fans later noticed the dangling threads, especially the awkward chemistry between Spartan and Huxley, sparking a persistent fan theory that she was secretly his daughter. It wasn't true, but the absence of answers gave the myth its power. What could have been a heartfelt arc ended up as one of cinema's strangest what-ifs, a family reunion erased by the blade of pacing. Number 6. Buried beneath all the explosions and satire was a shadow of a lawsuit that never quite happened. In the mid-1980s, a Hungarian author named István Nemere published Fight of the Dead, a sci-fi novel about enemies cryogenically frozen and revived in a pacifist future where violence was outlawed. When Demolition Man hit theaters, Nemere was stunned at the similarities. Criminals encased in ice, thawed into a sanitized society, and chaos erupting when brutality returned. He went public with the claim that Hollywood had stolen his story, but taking on Warner Brothers was no small feat. Nemere admitted he couldn't afford the legal war, and without international copyright enforcement, the case fizzled before it ever reached a courtroom. Still, Hungarian media ran with the accusation, and fans of the novel whispered that the blockbuster's premise wasn't entirely original. Today, Fight of the Dead is remembered mainly because of Demolition Man's success. A curious footnote where a little-known Eastern European novel briefly collided with Hollywood spectacle, leaving behind one of sci-fi cinema's strangest what-if controversies. Number 7. At first, Demolition Man was shaping up to be something sly, a darkly comic piece of social satire with more bite than boom. The early drafts leaned heavier on irony than action, poking fun at political correctness and corporate creep with a sharp wink. But once producer Joel Silver came aboard, subtlety didn't stand a chance. Silver, the architect of Lethal Weapon and Die Hard, believed audiences came for spectacle, not nuance. He tore through Fred Decker's quieter draft and demanded constant momentum, bigger explosions, louder shootouts, and one outrageous set piece after another. Under his watch, every scene was designed to top the last. The satire stayed, but it was wrapped in a Stallone-sized action circus, paced like a roller coaster that never slowed down. For Silver, story always came second to energy, and the result was a film that felt like controlled chaos. Critics rolled their eyes, but fans embraced it. The very excess that worried some writers became the film's defining stamp, proof that in 90s Hollywood, Joel Silver didn't just produce movies, he detonated them. Number 8. On screen, San Angeles looked like a gleaming city of the future, spotless towers, endless freeways, and a landscape scrubbed of history. But it wasn't a CGI wonderland, it was Irvine, California. Producers originally dreamed of filming in San Diego and San Francisco, but the budget crushed those plans. So they turned to Orange County, where 1970s and 80s architecture had already built a strangely futuristic aesthetic. Stark glass offices, wide streets, and no trace of old-world character. It worked perfectly for a story set after a massive earthquake had rebuilt civilization. The blank, almost too perfect skyline gave San Angeles an uncanny feel, a future that was both real and unsettling. Watching Demolition Man now, you're not looking at sets or models. You're seeing the real suburbs of Irvine, a city that accidentally looked like tomorrow long before Hollywood arrived to film it. Number 9. The sleek vehicles gliding through San Angeles weren't movie props cobbled together by the art department. They were real prototypes loaned straight from General Motors. The crown jewel was the GM Ultralight, a futuristic concept car so rare that only one fully functional version existed. For Demolition Man, GM built additional non-driving shells just to fill out the streets. Their lightweight carbon fiber bodies and bubble-shaped designs made them look like alien technology dropped into a Stallone film. On screen, they became the perfect backdrop to a sanitized future where even car crashes looked stylish. Off-screen, they were the most expensive rentals in Hollywood, guarded like museum pieces and carefully maneuvered between takes. Long before Tesla or self-driving hype, these prototypes gave audiences a glimpse of a future that never quite arrived, except in the world of Demolition Man. Number 10. In the US, Demolition Man declared Taco Bell the lone survivor of the franchise wars. Audiences laughed at the absurdity of tuxedo dinners served under a neon bell. But when the movie shipped overseas, international distributors worried that most viewers had never even heard of Taco Bell. The solution? Rewrite reality. In Europe, Asia, and parts of South America, every reference and logo was swapped for Pizza Hut, another chain owned by the same parent company. That meant crews had to film 2 sets of inserts, one with Taco Bell branding and another with Pizza Hut signage seamlessly edited in. Fans who later compared VHS tapes or DVD imports discovered 2 parallel timelines, one where Stallone dined on tacos, another where he twirled pasta under Pizza Hut chandeliers. In a movie obsessed with fractured realities, this corporate edit accidentally created one of its weirdest. Number 11. The pounding theme of Demolition Man didn't begin in a studio built for Hollywood spectacle. It started a decade earlier in a smoky rehearsal room with the Police. In 1981, Sting wrote and recorded Demolition Man as a snarling reggae punk track for the band, later handing it off to Grace Jones, who turned it into a ferocious, swaggering anthem of her own. By the time Stallone was chasing Wesley Snipes through the rubble of San Angeles, the song was already a cult artifact of the new wave era. Rather than commission something new, Warner Brothers went retro. Sting re-recorded Demolition Man as a solo cut for the film's soundtrack, this time slower, heavier, and pulsing with menace. It gave the movie an extra layer of irony, a futuristic satire about control and chaos built on a song born in the anarchic early 80s. What started as a political punk snarl became the unlikely anthem of a dystopian blockbuster. For fans, it wasn't just background music. It was proof that even old songs can find new lives, reshaped by the future. Number 12. When Demolition Man hit theaters in Kuwait, audiences weren't lining up to see John Spartan, at least not under that name. Local distributors decided Stallone's Rambo brand carried more weight, so they rebranded the film Rambo the Destroyer. Imagine expecting jungle warfare and guerrilla combat, only to be dropped into cryo prisons, Taco Bell dinners, and the mystery of 3 seashells. The title switch was pure marketing opportunism, but it worked. Tickets sold fast on the strength of Rambo's legacy. For Stallone, it It created an accidental alternate timeline where his Vietnam vet had somehow leapt into the future to battle Wesley Snipes. Fans still joke about wanting to see that crossover for real. Rambo with laser rifles and armored police cars. Instead, what Kuwait got was a bizarre mashup. A cop satire dressed in the skin of an action franchise that had nothing to do with it. Number 13. Demolition Man didn't just launch Sandra Bullock's career, it seemed to map it out in advance. In one scene, as cops debate thawing John Spartan, a tiny model bus sits in the background. A year later, Bullock was behind the wheel of a speeding bus in Speed, the role that made her a star. The coincidences didn't stop there. In the film's sanitized fast food future, every restaurant is Taco Bell, years before Bullock won an Oscar in The Blind Side, playing the wife of a man who built his fortune running Taco Bell franchises. It's as if her career was hiding in plain sight, foreshadowed in the rubble of a sci-fi satire. Viewers thought they were watching a quirky sidekick cop, but the movie was quietly hinting at the powerhouse Bullock was about to become. In hindsight, Demolition Man didn't just predict a dystopian future, it predicted Sandra Bullock's. Number 14. Demolition Man was rated R. Blood, profanity, decapitations. Exactly the kind of movie kids weren't supposed to watch. And yet, Mattel rolled out a full toy line as if it were the next Saturday morning cartoon. Spartan and Phoenix became plastic heroes, complete with spring-loaded weapons, detachable armor. Parents were baffled. The irony went deeper. Many of the figures were recycled molds from The New Adventures of He-Man, so kids unknowingly staged battles where Stallone's future cop shared his muscles and armor with an old space-age He-Man toy. It was corporate marketing at its most bizarre, a violent satire of consumerism turned into literal children's merchandise. For a film warning about overbearing corporations, the strangest twist was that it ended up selling itself straight to the toy aisle. Number 15. The movie may have ended with Spartan thawed and Phoenix frozen for good, but the story didn't stop there. DC Comics jumped in with a 4-issue Demolition Man miniseries, diving deeper into San Angeles, its crime-ridden wastelands, and even side stories for the rebels. The tone was pulp sci-fi madness, part social satire, part action serial. Then came Acclaim's video game for the SNES and Sega Genesis, which seemed designed to confuse. Levels switched mid-mission from side-scrolling shooter to overhead maze without warning, leaving players whiplashed. Critics trashed it. But for kids of the 90s, it was still a chance to blast through Spartan's world with a controller in hand. Together, the comics and games turned the film from a 2-hour spectacle into a tiny chaotic franchise, one that lived on in panels and pixels long after the credits rolled. Number 16. For 3 decades, fans have obsessed over Demolition Man's strangest gag, the 3 seashells in the bathroom. No one in the film explains how they're used, leaving Spartan and the audience baffled. Screenwriter Daniel Waters later revealed the idea came from a friend who kept seashells in his own bathroom purely as decoration. Waters thought it looked futuristic, so he tossed it in as a joke. Since then, theories have spiraled. Some claim 2 shells are for scraping, 1 for polishing. Stallone himself once suggested they worked like primitive bidets.
How did the 3 seashells work? Without getting too gross, imagine how chopsticks work. Use your imagination from there.
The mystery became a running punchline in interviews, fan forums, even cosplay displays at conventions. What began as a random set-dressing suggestion grew into one of sci-fi cinema's most enduring riddles, proof that sometimes the silliest details outlive the explosions. Number 17. Sylvester Stallone may have been battling Simon Phoenix by day, but by night, he was chasing birdies. During filming, Stallone developed an obsession with golf, so much so that he had a private driving range built near the set and even brought in a pro instructor to keep his swing sharp. Dennis Leary recalled being woken by Stallone banging on his trailer door at midnight, golf clubs in hand, demanding he come out and play. Sandra Bullock backed it up in interviews, laughing that instead of running lines, Stallone preferred whacking balls under the stars. The crew often joked that he was rehearsing for the PGA Tour instead of his next scene. While Spartan fought a cryo-criminal future on screen, Stallone was just as intense off-screen, locked in a personal duel with the fairway. Number 18. When Demolition Man hit theaters in 1993, its vision of a squeaky clean future seemed like absurd parody. A society where people were fined for swearing, fast food chains won corporate wars, and cops were too timid to fight real criminals. It played as a broad joke, a cartoon dystopia wrapped in explosions. But as the decades rolled on, audiences started to notice how much of it felt eerily familiar. Cities adopting no profanity ordinances, corporations swallowing rivals until only a handful dominated, and debates over whether police were trained more for paperwork than danger. Suddenly, the satire satire didn't feel so distant. What critics once dismissed as goofy futurism now reads like prophecy, its exaggerated warnings creeping closer to reality. The movie promised parody. Time delivered prophecy. Number 19. One of Demolition Man's funniest throwaway gags comes during a car scene, when Sandra Bullock's character casually mentions the Schwarzenegger Presidential Library.
I have in fact perused some newsreels from the Schwarzenegger Library.
The Schwarzenegger Library?
Yes, the Schwarzenegger Presidential Library.
At the time, it was pure satire. The idea of the Terminator running for office was a punchline about celebrity politics gone too far. But less than a decade later, that joke suddenly looked prophetic. In 2003, Arnold Schwarzenegger stunned the world by becoming the governor of California, turning fiction into reality. He couldn't technically run for president, since the Constitution bars foreign-born candidates, but the fact that he came close enough to make people wonder gave the line a surreal weight. What started as a tongue-in-cheek joke about Hollywood's action stars ended up aging into one of the most uncanny predictions in sci-fi history. Number 20. When Demolition Man hit theaters in 1993, critics didn't see satire, they saw noise. Reviews called it cartoonish, overblown, even idiotic. To them, it was just another Stallone shoot-'em-up with explosions drowning out thought. But audiences caught something the critics missed. Beneath the gunfire and cryo prisons was a razor-edged parody about censorship, corporate monopolies, and a society so sanitized it had forgotten how to function. The film opened at number 1, eventually grossing nearly $160 million, and VHS gave it a second life. Traded in dorm rooms, rewatched on cable, quoted for its seashells and Taco Bell jokes. Over time, the world it mocked started to look eerily familiar. Verbal morality statutes felt less like comedy and more like a prophecy in the age of cancel culture and speech policing. Fast food monopolies, privatized policing, politicians worshipped as celebrities. Suddenly, Demolition Man wasn't dumb at all. The movie that critics once dismissed grew sharper with each passing decade, transforming into one of the most unsettlingly accurate sci-fi cult classics of the 90s. Bonus fact: Wesley Snipes hated bleaching his hair for Simon Phoenix, shaving it off the moment filming wrapped. But in the real world, it sparked a cultural shockwave. NBA bad boy Dennis Rodman saw Snipes' wild blonde look and copied it, launching a streak of ever-changing neon hairstyles that became his trademark. Suddenly, a villain's over-the-top hairdo leapt from sci-fi dystopia to the basketball court, where Rodman turned it into a global style statement. In the end, Phoenix didn't just terrorize San Angeles, he rewired the playbook for rebellion in sports and pop culture alike. Demolition Man began as a wild Stallone-Snipes face-off, stuffed with explosions, satire, and a future too absurd to take seriously. Seashell toilets, Taco Bell empires, fines for swearing. It was all played for laughs. But 3 decades later, the jokes sting with eerie accuracy. We live in a world of sanitized language, corporate monopolies, and political celebrities who look like they walked straight out of a parody script. What critics once dismissed as dumb satire now feels like a warning dressed in neon armor. If this future still feels a little too close to ours, drop a comment. Tell us what cult classic we should unfreeze next. Because Demolition Man endures not just as a 90s action cult hit, but as a prophecy that refused to stay frozen. The future came faster than anyone thought, and maybe the real demolition wasn't of cities, but of common sense.